There I am already. Welcome to the InvestGP committee meeting of May 14th. I, Gladys Blackmore, am the chair, and I am joined on this committee by Councillor Bressie, Councillor Palat, and Mayor Clayton. I would start by asking for an adoption of the agenda. Councillor Bressie.
So moved.
Call a question.
Bressie in favor.
We have no delegations today. That is carried unanimously. We have no delegations today, and so we'll move on to the service area update. Chief McEachern.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. For the service area update, I'll start with economic development. We have had, in rural renewal stream, we've had 14 new employer applications were received in the last 14 days. 21 candidate endorsement letters were processed in the last 2 weeks. As I mentioned in previous committee, program is transitioning over to the Citizen Engage GP Center for the initial completion of applications. We did recently learn, though, that we have currently have 387 candidates endorsed by the province through the rural renewal stream. That is the highest endorsement for the entire province. So we account for about 23% of the total candidates through the province in this immigration stream. We're the largest community and have the largest number of endorsed candidates. Due to our robust screening process, we are actually seeing our candidates be expedited, and they're being processed faster due to all of the pre-work that we're doing here in Grande Prairie. Welcome emails were sent out to 12 new businesses for license issued from April 23rd to April 30th. 7 of the licenses issued were for home-based and 5 were commercial. The Invest Grande Prairie team, in collaboration with Mayor Clayton and the Grande Prairie Regional Hospital, recently organized another site and city tour for a physician considering relocating to our community. And the InvestGP staff attended the Edmonton Real Estate Forum, meeting with developers and real estate experts and hearing about market updates and projections in the industry. This week, the Invest Grande Prairie team is manning a booth at the Peace Countries Energy Show, May 15th to 16th at the Terra Centre, Evergreen Park. In investment attraction, Invest Grande Prairie is co-hosting 8 site selectors who will be visiting the region for the Site Link Forum to highlight our region's potential and pitch our competitive advantages and sites. Economic Development Department reps from each partner municipality will participate in this forum and tour of the region, highlighting the gig, the airport, Northwest Polytechnic, and greenfield lands available for new development. In events and entertainment, Lacrosse Grande Prairie has picked out open time in the arena for their 2024 season. And of interest, the Bennett's Box Centre has issued 26,201 tickets in Q1 2024. So concerts, 3,899 tickets. Community events were 5,076. And Storm from January to March was 17,226. We've also completed 35 pre-print ticket orders in this quarter, which equates to about 11,038 tickets, so quite a volume of tickets. In events, we have Mini Pop Kids in the Bows on May 24th, Dinosaur World Live in the Bows on May 26th, Stampede Bust Out May 28th, Pride Society annual event May 31st, Rainbow Bright Teen Dance, and June 1st, the Party in White, and our Queen Tribute June 3rd. We also have, as I've mentioned in previous committees, a number of high school graduations. Grand Gathering Gala on June 15th, Canada Day July 1st, the Grand Con Comic Conference July 10th to 12th, and Rotary Rib Fest July 19th to 21st. And with that, I can take any questions.
Looking around the room, I see Councillor Bosch.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not on this committee, but I'm just adding in the Stampede Parade on May 25th.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised, so we'll move on to item 4.2, freestanding sign. And I would just note that David Atkinson from 5 Star Permits is online. So if we have any questions for the developer, we can ask. But Mr. Johnson, do you want to go forward with this?
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. I'll turn it over to Diane Tennant to present this.
Morning. There we go. The subject property for this application is located on the corner of 97th Avenue and 112th Street. Both of these roads are identified as major collector roads in the Transportation System Bylaw. The business operating on this subject property is completing a refresh of the signs on their business. The applicant has constructed the concrete base for the freestanding sign on the corner at approximately the same location as the previous freestanding sign, and it has been there for 20 years. The applicant hadn't realized that there have been changes made to the sign bylaw since the previous sign was approved. Because of the changes to the sign bylaw, any sign located on corners of arterial roads or major collector roads must now be set back further than the standard corner visibility triangle. To meet the bylaw requirements on this corner, the freestanding sign would need to be located behind the pink line at the top of the triangle on the drawing. The proposed location of the sign results in a variance of 61% to the setback from the corner property line. The request for a variance was circulated to 9 adjacent property owners and no responses were received. Transportation Department within the city was consulted and they have no concern with the proposed location of the sign. It is therefore recommended that the InvestGP Committee approve development permit PL 240100 for a freestanding sign with a 61% variance to the setback from the corner property line for the reasons as identified in the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Tennant. I did drive by this location on the weekend, and there's no blockage of view at all by the concrete base. So I look forward to I would look at my committee for any comments, questions they would have. Councillor Plott, sorry, I thought I said yes.
Sorry. Thanks, Chair. No, I'm ready to do business arising unless anybody had questions. I also had drove by the site on the weekend and thought, and appreciate administration working with this proponent to offer this variance, but I didn't see any big risks to the community. So unless any of your committee members have a question specifically, I'm ready to do business. So not seeing any. So I would just move that committee approve a development permit PL 240100 for a freestanding sign with 61% variance to the setback from the corner property line for the following reasons. The proposed sign will not negatively impact adjacent properties. The proposed sign shows a high standard of appearance and design, and the proposed sign does not cause a traffic safety concern.
That motion is in order. If I have any questions, comments, or discussion of the motion, seeing none, I will call a question. And that carries. Thank you, Mr. Atkinson, for joining us online. That was an easy meeting for you, I'm thinking. We'll move on to item 4.3, Telecommunications Tower. And again, I would ask Mr. Johnson to introduce this subject.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. Committee had made motions regarding cell towers. One was to explore options for regulations relating to camouflaging towers. And the other motion was regarding placement of sign on the subject property of any future cell tower proposals. I'll pass it over to Mr. Babalola to present on our draft bylaws in that regard.
Good morning, Chair Blackmore. On February 6, administration was directed to bring back the report exploring options for cell tower shrouding in the city and to prepare a land use bylaw amendment to require cell tower proponents to provide information on a board on the property advertising the application. In response to this directive, administration, as part of the review of the land use bylaw, compared the city's policies and regulations surrounding cell tower siting. Compare the city's policies and regulations surrounding cell tower siting to that of other municipalities in Alberta. The review showed that the policies in our land use bylaw are similar to that of other municipalities in terms of requiring cell towers to blend with the environment where they are located, including the use of camouflage techniques, and examples of the policies from other municipalities was included in the report. The city's land use bylaw currently encourages the use of camouflage techniques. The proposed amendment emphasizes council's preference for the use of camouflage techniques when proposing a cell tower in an area considered to be a high-profile or sensitive area, such as a high-visibility area or in close proximity to residential development. And this was intentionally drafted to not make it a requirement for all proposed cell towers, but to also allow the committee to determine on a case-by-case basis. The sets of images on the screen are examples of the camouflage cell towers. Okay. The other changes being proposed in this amendment concern providing more notification to the residents, especially the owners of the lands closer to the proposed location. The draft bylaw will require the cell tower proponents to place a sign on the subject property to notify the landowners in the neighborhood about the proposed cell tower. The size of the sign will be a minimum of 8 by 4 feet. The proponents are currently required to circulate the development proposal to landowners within 3 times the height of the proposed cell tower. The amendment is not changing this requirement, but adding that the development officers circulate the notification package to landowners of all residential properties within a radius of 6 times the proposed tower height. These 2 changes will also allow residents to be more informed about the proposed cell towers. It is recommended that committee directs administration to take forward to council an amendment to the land use bylaw to emphasize the council's preference for proponents to employ camouflage design for telecommunication towers and to improve public notification requirements regarding the placement of telecommunication cell towers. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Mr. Babaloala. Do we have any questions or comments coming from committee? Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. Could you walk me through a little bit about what timelines look like in terms of when the applicant does their consultation, when we find out they're doing their public notification, when we send out letters to the public about our process, and when it comes to committee? Just what's the timeline for this look like, do you expect?
Through the chair. So usually when they send out this notification, they have 30 days for them to put their reports together and get back to us with their report. And immediately they send it out is when we also receive it. So I would say the timeline is 30 days.
Okay. And then how long does it take us to turn around and get our material out?
Through the chair. By how long you mean, like how many?
Well, really specifically what I'm worried about is all the time I'm getting knocked by residents because they get a letter from the city or they find out that this is being considered and the decision is being made in 4 days, and they feel they're not getting enough time to give us input on that decision. We're really making it residents angry. I'm wondering if there's any way to make sure that our residents have more notice that this conversation is happening so they don't feel like they're being told very last minute what's going on.
Through the chair, typically whether it's a matter of taking a cell tower application to committee or any development application, we look to give residents approximately 2 to 3 weeks notice that something is going to committee. I am aware of a few instances within the last year where there were some confusion about dates, but that was an unusual circumstance. There haven't been any instances, to my knowledge, where residents were only provided 4 days. So perhaps there was some issue with mail that's out of our control. I can just assure committee that we aim to give adjacents ample notice. We have noticed in certain situations that too much notice is not a good thing either, because then they forget about it. So we typically target that 2 to 3 weeks range.
Okay, thank you. do have a question about something different. Do you want me to?
Go ahead.
I'm also curious about this, the proposal that we asked them to put a sign up on their property. Would a City of Grande Prairie logo be on that sign at all, or would it just be completely branded with their logo, their stuff?
Through the chair, that's a good question. I don't believe we actually have a template at this point. However, I guess the way that we've envisioned it is that it would be like a rezoning sign that we forward to applicants to post on the property, in which case there is a city logo. I think that we would try and design it in such a way that it would capture people's attention without trying to look like an advertising sign. So if it was a sign that just said TELUS or Rogers or something like that, it might not catch people's eye. But if the city's logo is on it and it says notice or notice of application or something to that effect, that's the design we'd be looking for.
And I know, just for me, if these bylaws change, I'd hope personally not see a city logo on it. And just what I'm concerned about is people see these cell phone towers and they think they're a traditional development permit, where we're actually the development authority and we actually get to make a decision on this, where really we're just providing a recommendation one way or the other. And I really think that in the way we send out those letters, maybe there's some opportunities to make it a little bit clearer to residents what that letter actually is and what council authority actually is. But I really am worried if that sign looks like a development permit sign, that they think it just creates that narrative that this is a development permit. So I just would encourage administration to be thoughtful about that side of communicating if these bylaw changes pass.
Just respond. One way to get around that is, on our development signs, it states City of Grande Prairie and the permit policy number. We can do the same, except instead of the city, we can put the CRTC or whatever their current acronym is these days, and their policy reference, so that it kind of underscores that procedure. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. Good catch, Councillor Rusty and Councillor Blackmore. Totally agree. I think that would be a good change on an education piece for our community. Just wondering, when I read through the proposed changes, appreciate that we want to keep wording soft, but when I read it, it sounds like the wording is we would prefer in one of them, and then the other wording is on the AB Munis ones is that we would encourage. And so I'm just wondering, when I hear the words prefer and encourage, and a developer comes in and says, I just don't want to do that, how do we ensure that those things happen when we're using kind of soft wording on that? I guess I don't want to get so prescriptive, but I'm worried that a proponent could look at this wording and also say, well, it's just, I don't want to do it. And we encouraged them, but they don't want to do it.
Yes, through the chair. Admittedly, this is a bit of a challenging amendment, because we do not want to make it, or we recommend that it not be a requirement. Because if we make it a requirement and say camouflaging is required in all instances, then you have a cell tower in the middle of Richmond Industrial Park that's 40 or 50 meters high, and you tell them that it needs to look like a tree, like that. It's unrealistic and potentially cost prohibitive. So we're trying to make it that it's more on a case-by-case basis, and perhaps in instances where committee feels that you might be able to get behind a cell tower proposal, provided it blends in with the environment and whatnot, that you have that discretion. So, so certainly at the administrative level, we could say, and it's going to be a little bit of a evolution in terms of learning what committees' preferences are and whatnot, but we could encourage applicants and say, in this particular case, you're kind of in a high visibility area, or you're close to residential or whatnot, and this might be an instance where committee is looking for it. They can push back and certainly try and discuss with committee if committee is open to allowing it without camouflage. But certainly there's the chance that there may be applications that have to come back to committee. So committee states, you know what, in this particular case, we could get behind it if it is camouflaged. And you have a discussion with the applicant, and the applicant goes away and comes back. So it might just be a requirement that they have to come back or have that conversation with committee and explain why they're hesitant to camouflage it or how it becomes unfeasible. And then also, as mentioned in previous meetings on this same topic, with 5G, our understanding is that towers are going to become shorter and more of them, and potentially more proposals coming into residential areas. So in those instances, administration may be comfortable having that negotiation with applicants prior to coming to committee. So yeah, it's intentionally left open without making it a requirement, but to spell out specifically in case-by-case basis when it would and wouldn't be required is really tricky. So,
well, that's fair. And so if I'm understanding, administration's fine with the proposal, knowing that's a little bit open, but ultimately these decisions would come back to committee or council, that if we weren't happy with the proposal, we could stop it at that point.
Through the chair, absolutely. And yes, we would note it in the report that it's an option that committee could direct the applicant to go back and explore shrouding options.
Okay, no, appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson or Mr. Babalola, I know that in the report you do cite other jurisdictions and the wording that they've used. Primarily, it's also quite nebulous and not terribly strict. Is that in response to the fact that municipalities don't have a lot of control over cell towers to begin with?
Through the chair, that's our understanding, is that if we had a reputation with ISED as being unreasonable in terms of our requirements, that they may just approve all of them despite there being the lack of a letter of attestation. So it's our understanding that most municipalities have the regulations drafted as that to provide it on a case-by-case basis, and that we are just simply input on a proposal as opposed to a decision maker.
Okay, thank you. I see no further hands up. Someone want to do the business for this? Councillor Bressie?
Great. Thank you, Chair Blackmore. I would move that committee direct administration take forward to council an amendment to the land use bylaw to emphasize council's preference for proponents to employ camouflage design techniques for telecommunication towers and to approve public notification requirements regarding the placement of telecommunication cell towers.
That motion is in order. And discussion or debate? Seeing none, I'll call a question. And that carries. Thank you, gentlemen. We will move on to item number 8, outstanding items list, and go back to Chief McEachern.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. No changes recommended to the outstanding items list at this time.
Then could we have a motion to accept as presented? Councillor Pralat?
So moved.
I'll call a question. The motion on our screen reads as amended. You're going to fix it? Okay. You didn't take any off. She said it was as presented. That concludes our meeting for InvestGP. We'll take a couple-minute break before reconvening for Operational Services.